Welcome to the AVAIL Podcast, where we dig deep and talk about the art of leadership. My name is Virgil Sierra, your AVAIL Podcast host and lead pastor of Vertical Church, aka Iglesia Vertical in South Florida. And today we're sitting down with Pastor John Cameron. He's the founder of Empower Leader, which is a lead pastor coaching program. And in this episode, we're going to unpack a little bit about this program and how it can benefit lead pastors. John, I'm so excited to connect with you here on the AVAIL Podcast. We met about a year ago at a conference here in the States. I know that you're connecting from Australia. Thanks for joining us on the AVAIL Podcast. How you feeling?
I'm feeling great. It's an honor to be here. Thanks for having me on. And it was a great delight to get to meet you last year and then to reconnect now. It's absolute fun. We're coming from the tropics here in Australia to the tropics in America. So it's a great delight.
Yeah, it is. It is. And I'm thankful that we have this time to lean in a little bit and learn from you, but first get to know you. I always like for our AVAIL audience to get to know who our guests are. So can you just take a moment and share a little bit about who is John Cameron?
John Cameron. So I started a ministry full time when I was 19 years old. 4 years as a youth evangelist, 6 years as a youth pastor, then founded a church in New Zealand. Over 20 years, we grew that to become a large multi-site church, the largest church potentially in the history of the country.
Wow.
14 different locations, 10 fully fledged campuses. And then our season there came to an end. And for the last 2 years, we've been launching Empower Leader and coaching lead pastors of churches. So it's just been a really fun journey to sort of walk to this point now. And in this season of my life, I find myself just helping lead pastors, coming alongside, providing solutions to problems. I work on the theory that the greatest problem you have in your life is the one that you have no solution for. So we sort of come along and because we've walked through so many different challenges in pastoring a large multi-site church, we're then able to then say, hey, you can navigate it this way. And it's been a tremendous delight just to come alongside and to resource other pastors and to help make their lives better. It's honestly so much fun.
Yeah, I can imagine that. And, you know, before we kind of jump in the conversation, I can't help but notice something from what you shared and ask you something. But you started pretty young in ministry. And not only did you start young, but you definitely kind of hit different areas from youth to children, evangelist, youth pastor, you know, and kind of leading. How is that? I mean, did you know from a really young age, I really want to do this? I mean, you know, as young as a teenager or your 20s, or was it something that kind of hit and boom and just started all of a sudden?
The first time I knew that I was called to ministry, I think I was about either 4 or 6 years old.
Wow.
I had quite a sovereign encounter with God in the middle of the night, and I woke up and I knew that God wanted my whole life.
Wow.
And I mean, I think that is very young, but I remember it as clearly as it was yesterday. So it really defined my life. Then I walked away from the Lord when I was a teenager. High school was not particularly kind to me, as it's not kind to many. And then I got radically saved when I was 18. And then when I was 19 years old, which is the year I started in ministry, my mentor, Winky Pratney, was preaching on revival for 6 days at a conference. I went along to the conference. God just absolutely wrecked my life. And that's how I managed to step into this so quickly. So, I mean, really for me, it was like just literally, God is real. I want to serve him. Let's get started. And so we were off and racing.
I love it. I love it. Now, Empower Leader. This is specifically a coaching program targeted for lead pastors. In other words, for the lead leader of the church, for the lead pastors to really say, we need some help, we need some guidance, we need some strategy. How is this? Why did you launch this? How was this born? What's the heart behind Empower Leader?
I'll tell you where it came from. So essentially, I moved to Australia towards the end of 2022. I live on the Gold Coast, which is just similar to Miami. It's beautiful. It's paradise.
Mm.
And then pastors from around, the greater kind of Queensland area, the state of Queensland here, started to seek me out because they'd heard where I was living. And so we started having like these 3-hour lunches in cafes
Mm.
where I was just grabbing a notebook and they were bringing to me their kind of problems and we were just mapping out solutions to the problems. So I found myself getting to a point where I was meeting with one pastor one day, another pastor another day, another pastor the next day, and I realized we were solving similar problems. Then I started to create material and also began to travel to other parts of Australia doing intensives and boardrooms with lead teams of churches, accountants, like all the team, and started realizing that again there were themes that were being created. So every time we find a problem in the life of a church, we create content. That's basically what we do. If there's a problem, we create content. If there's an issue, we tell people how to solve it. Because I think the uniqueness of my experience is that being from a small island country, 5 million people, there isn't a professional Christian industry that surrounds it. And because
Right.
I came up being the children's pastor, the youth pastor, the guy who found the new building, the guy who built the building, you know what I mean? The guy who raised the money,
Hmm.
the guy who raised the lead team, the guy who built, the staff team. I sort of have a unique kind of nuts and bolts understanding of every aspect. So then when it comes to coaching lead pastors, we've sort of just been able to compile that information together. And really, we start the journey of the 1-year program with effectively just like, let's start with the most important thing, and that's vision clarity. And every church thinks they have it. Most churches don't have it.
Right.
And then we end it with really like, here's how that you can scale forever without ever stopping. And we launched the multi-site kind of like tools and equipment there. So we're sort of going through this 1-year journey that I'm super proud of, where we're just bringing together what I would call the latest practice, like the best kind of way to think about every aspect of what a lead pastor needs to know. And it just informs them in a way that allows them to move faster. Normally with a lead pastor, the problem that you experience is not that you're doing the wrong thing. It's that you're doing a good thing when there's a better thing. So what we're trying to do is say, let's not invest time or money into something that's only going to give you a 10% return. Let's try and get it to every investment is going to get you exponential return, and bring the knowledge of how to make those assessments to the pastor, and then by educating them to liberate them to go into the world. So we've been really blessed to do everything from a lot of the pastors that kind of like are attracted to the program are those who are either facing a big issue right now or intimidated by trying to take their church forward and feeling like they have no tools to move them forward. And they're sort of like Joshua in front of Jericho, right? So Joshua's in front of Jericho. He has no solution. The
Mm.
man with a drawn sword in his hand appears, and then he's like, okay, this is a new way of thinking about this problem. So I think, that's what we've been able to do for pastors, is sort of say, okay, you want to scale, here's how you can. You want to
Mm.
move forward, this is what you need to think about.
That's good. I can imagine. I mean, I'm just being honest here. I can imagine a lead pastor who maybe has been struggling or maybe frustrated, sitting down with you, and all of a sudden getting some tools, hearing some perspectives that maybe they weren't seeing or hearing before, and all of a sudden, oh wait, this can help, right?
Yeah.
I love hearing this. I guess here's my next question, John. When let's say I'm a pastor, I'm a lead pastor, right? And I said, John, I need your help. Can you come on board? You have to start somewhere, and I know you mentioned kind of vision clarity is kind of where you start with on the journey. But from your experience when you sit down with lead pastors, what are some of the specific biggest challenges or some of the specific areas of just some help, some systems, some structure in these areas? What are some of the things that some of the lead pastors you work with kind of cry out with this, and it's maybe a recurring pattern you see?
I would see the challenge of, look, I mean, being a lead pastor is a hiding to nowhere, right? Like it's a job, you want to be delivered out of if you can. And if you can't be delivered out of it, then you deserve all the support, encouragement, friendship, consolation that you can possibly get. It's a blood sport being a pastor, and every lead pastor needs someone in their corner. When I meet pastors who are deeply challenged or facing difficulty in their life, it's normally because they don't have a way through whatever they're facing right now. And so what I would say is, you get in trouble as a lead pastor when you try to do anything that is outside of the vision that God has given to you. So it's so easy for us to put on Saul's armor as a lead pastor, to try to be somebody that we're not, do things that we're not mandated to do. Comparison is everywhere. And I do feel, especially for younger pastors or getting started pastors, it's a lot harder to start than it was 30 years ago, simply because whilst I'm starting in obscurity here, social media presents me also with what everybody else is doing over here that is already taken off and explosive. So that's a unique challenge. So I think that we've got to find a way that we just stay within the vision that God has given to us and be faithful to executing that. The next way that we get in trouble is we don't align every resource we have to the greatest opportunity that's in front of us right now. So distraction, dilution, trying to do too many things simultaneously is another common way that we get in trouble. I mean, outside of the power of God, the three things that God's given to you to build your church are time, people, and money. Time, people, and money. Those are your finite resources outside of the power of God. That's what you have at your disposal. And the results that you're getting right now are largely linked to the effective or ineffective use of those three resources: time, people, and money. And they're reflected in the life of your church by your org chart, your calendar, and your budget. So how those are being used is going to determine the results that you're going to get. So we're often helping people to realign what they're doing to make sure that they're distributing those in a way that's going to get them maximum return. Again, the good return, the 5%, 10% return can be at the expense of the exponential return. So we want to be understanding how to deploy resources in the right way in order for things to move forward.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. I can
Am I
imagine.
making sense?
Huh?
Am I making sense?
100%. And as you're talking, I'm processing and I'm thinking, like, I'm putting myself right in the shoes. By the way, I am a lead pastor, and so I know that having the voices of some mentors and some coaches and some overseers has been a huge blessing for me.
Yeah.
I'm curious as well in this journey because you had the experience again of being a young person who from an early age knew you had a calling to ministry. From evangelist in a season of your life to pastoring to church planter to church builder, right? And then transitioning to another season where now you're kind of there to help resource, equip, train pastors and in their churches. Why do you think, or from your experience, how can coaching make a difference? Because again, this is a coaching program, right? How have you seen coaching just tangibly and practically make a difference in some of those pastors that you've had a chance to coach?
Well, I think, I can't speak for coaching outside of my experience, which is both receiving it from Sam Chand, who's obviously someone that we both know and love dearly, and the coaching that I've been able to give. That's my only two experiences of it. I think what we've been able to give has been that, Jethro comes alongside Moses and he's like, hey, Moses, what are you doing here, right? Like, because Moses is in Exodus 18, he's got all the potential in the world. He's ridden a wave of ministry that's been arguably the greatest wave of ministry the world has ever seen outside of the ministry of Jesus. And then he gets to the wilderness and suddenly he's just on the grind. He has no clarity. His team are frustrated. His marriage is not in a good place. His children have no father that's actively invested in their life. And then Jethro comes along as a coach, really, and says, Moses, let's structure this thing this way. Let's approach this problem this way. And it's been my experience that when you come alongside somebody and you bring objectivity, or when you bring, sort of like a 30,000 foot view to someone who's trying to execute a situation on the ground, you're able to just give them two things. Number one, assurance, like firm, you are walking the right path. That is so validating, sleep giving, anxiety reducing. When someone who's already walked the journey can tell you you're doing the right things right now, stay faithful. This is gonna work out really well for you. The other thing that a coach can do is expose where you're about to step that would be not the right place to step. So, I mean, of the churches that we've helped in the last 2 years, a third of them are now in building programs. So, one church we helped leased for 30 years.
Wow.
And is now in the early days of a building program. And what it shows you is just like, if you can get somebody to give you counsel on what you're doing from their perspective, it allows you to approach things in a different way and to therefore move forward at a faster rate. So it's what you don't know that kills you. It's what, my people perish for lack of knowledge.
Yeah.
It's always walking with that knowledge that what I don't know is my greatest enemy right now, and that there is another way that I could approach this situation that would move me faster. So we're always trying to seek out that and bring it to people. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. I can't help but think about your perspective again. I think you mentioned it was close to 20 years of building church. And this is just, I guess, this is more of a reflective thought for you, John, a reflective thought a little bit about, okay, go back to what year did you plant Arise Church in New Zealand?
2002, but November, so almost 2003.
All right, so let's go back to, January, February of 2002.
Yes.
And you're able to have a 2-hour coffee with the younger John Cameron across the table, and you're able to just shed some light and pour out some wisdom about some things to consider in this whole, church planting and pastoring journey. What are some of the things you're gonna tell young John?
That is such a good question. The first thing that I would tell young John would be take an offering for a building from day one.
Okay.
We experienced, absolutely phenomenal momentum really very quickly out the gate. And I think it's easy to just keep putting all your money into momentum and to not realize the power of that permanent facility to anchor you and to empower everything that you want to do for your future. The second thing that I would tell young John is I would say multi-site can be fool's gold. I would say be very slow. When I went to pioneer a church, Phil Pringle, who's a great man of God, around the world, but extremely well known in Australia and New Zealand, he said to me, I said to him, what advice would you give to a church planter? He said, don't. Pray that God will deliver you from it, and if he won't, well, here's some more advice. When someone says to me, what advice would you give about going multi-site? I would say don't. Like, if you can be talked out of it, don't do it. Because you are just inviting a whole lot of pressure upon yourself. And if you are up for it, great. But if you are not, then then don't do it. Like I would be saying, build a consolidated, strong foundation, get a permanent facility, anchor yourself, prove that you have an overflow. That would be something that I would say. Let me talk to you about what you should be thinking about before you go multi-site. Number one, you should absolutely have a clear why you are doing it. Like if you're going to go multi-site, you need a why that you cannot walk away from. If this is opportunism, don't do it. If
Right.
it's the hand of God upon you as a lead pastor, great. I'm on board. Let's go. The second thing that you need is you need an established leadership pipeline. You need not just theory, you need in practice to show that you can produce a surplus of leaders that demand new locations. Because if you're going to go multi-site, it's important to remember that you are now creating a demand for more leaders.
Right.
Right? Because
Right.
it's not just one location that needs a youth pastor. It's 2, 3, 4, 5. And please remember that unlike a lead pastor, even campus pastors resign.
Right.
So you are needing to produce leaders at the highest level, not just to advance, but to sustain. The third
Wow.
thing that you need is financial stability before you go multi-site. Remember that if you don't own your building and you go multi-site, you are delaying how easy it will be to get any buildings at all, because again, you're splitting your financial focus across multiple locations. And please remember that going multi-site does not make you more money. There is no surplus generated by becoming a multi-site church. That is a myth and needs to be understood clearly. And then the next thing that I would say about going multi-site, make sure you've got a clear why, make sure that you got a leadership surplus, make sure that you got financial stability, and then make sure that you have an understanding of the structure with which you're going to approach it. So then there needs to be a clear paradigm of what your multi-site is going to look at, because without an understanding of what the multi-site that you want to build is within you, you'll recruit for the wrong positions rather than creating something that's going to move forward. So I think if I was playing my time over again, I would be saying, where are you going? What is your base? How are you producing leaders? And what are you trying to accomplish?
That is solid right there. That is solid. So I think you're right. I think sometimes, especially when maybe a church is experiencing some growth early on, maybe we should go multi-site, right? Because it looks easy. They do it, right? But sometimes I think some pastors bite off a little more than they can chew. So I think this is wise advice. I want to dig in a little deeper in something you mentioned, because it caught my attention, and I would love to hear your perspective and your wisdom maybe in this area, which is tips for a solid leadership pipeline. Okay. We're in the lab. John, we're in the lab. My name is Virgil Sierra. I lead pastor of Vertical Church. I'm in the need to create a really solid leadership pipeline. I'm investigating. I'm asking. I'm learning. Now I'm coming to you, John Cameron. What are some tips that you've learned that can help me, that I need to think about, so I can have to develop a solid leadership pipeline?
Here are the 3 numbers of leadership development in the life of a church. Let me give you the numbers, and then I'll help you to understand what they are. 5, 10, and 20.
5, 10, and 20.
If you live according to these 3 numbers, your church will never lack leaders. I mean, the greatest challenge that we find in church life and movements around the world is that we have an environment of leadership that is not in abundance. So we have a scarcity mindset when it comes to leadership. If you want to move from scarcity to abundance, here's the 3 numbers: 5, 10, and 20. The first one is to recognize that in the life of every church, 1 in every 5 people is a leader. If 5 people walk through the front door of your church, 1 of them influence the other 4.
Come on.
So I remember being 20 years old. John Maxwell's in the background. I was driving down the road in Auckland, New Zealand, with his Enjoy Life Club cassette tape playing in my car. That's how old I am. And as I was listening to the cassette tape, he dropped it, the Pareto principle, 80-20 rule, 1 in every 5 people is a leader. I rewound the tape. 1 in every 5 people is a leader. I rewound the tape. 1 in every 5 people is a leader. And I remember starting at the age of 20 to pray a prayer, God help me to see the 1 in 5. When I became a youth pastor, I started with 5 kids in my youth group, 5. In the next few years, I took that to 150 to 200, which, back then was, a reasonable accomplishment.
Yeah.
But the way I did it was I just literally walked into youth every Friday night, and every group of kids, I was like, God, show me the 1 in 5. When I started my church, that's exactly what I did. So every lead pastor, if you want an abundance of leaders, ask yourself, who is the 1 in 5? See them, spot them, pray that you'll identify them, pray it every day. God, show me, God, show me. The next number is 10. And that is, once you've identified a 1 in 5, you have to put a 10 over that person. Everybody is a 10 somewhere, 1 being low, 10 being the highest possible. Churches that lack leaders are led by, or ministry departments that lack leaders are led by what I term reductionist leaders. They identify what is wrong with people, what needs to change about people, and they tell people what they need to do better at. Churches that have an abundance of leaders start from the premise that you are a 10 somewhere. There's something phenomenal about you. I want you to know it. I'm going to tell you what it is, and then I'm going to help you to maximize the potential of where you are a 10. Don't be a reducer. Live in awe of the wonder of the people that God has given to you. And then 10 is the percentage of your time required to invest in leadership development. No matter what your role is in the life of a church, the tendency will always be that task, administration, preparation trumps people development. So if you can keep 20% of your time going into the development of leaders, and for literally a decade of my life, Virgil, I color-coded my calendar a different color.
Wow.
Every time I was involved in anything leadership development. So if you're the lead pastor of a church, your staff meeting, your one-on-ones with people that you're investing into, the small group of leaders that you meet with, on a Tuesday morning for coffee and you're pouring into them. Whatever it is that you're doing that is involved in, it could potentially be even curriculum development for leaders in the life of your church. But if 20% of the time goes into leadership development, then you will be successful. You will raise up leaders.
Wow. Wow.
So that's the 3 numbers of leadership development. If you need a leadership pipeline in your church, let me just quickly break down how you can develop a leadership pipeline for any area. Number 1, identify the role you want the pipeline for. What do we need more of? Because at one stage of your leadership, that's going to be small group leaders. At another stage, that's going to be campus pastors, location pastors. So what are we training leaders for? The next thing we want to ask is, what does the ideal person in that position need to display? Like, what are the skills that they need? What are the personality attributes that they need? Don't make it hard. Just answer the question. Write it down. Get over writer's block. Just brainstorm it. Doesn't even have to be right or perfect on the first attempt. This is what I'm trying to train for. This is what I want them to know. This is the character attributes I want them to have. And then ask, okay, how are we going to equip them for that? And so then literally, I would advise that you have about 5 or 6 different ways that you're developing them. So group sessions, one-on-ones, books that they read, tasks that they fulfill, positions that they hold, mentors that walk alongside them. So just give them, these are the things that you're going to do. Make it a 1-year commitment. Have people involved in that area that are not going to, at the end, be put into that position. So you take some risks and put some people in this group, start it, run it for a year. And at the end of it, you will 100% get fruit in people that are able to do that position that you're training for.
I love it. You just broke down you just threw some wisdom gold nuggets, which I have received. Thank you for that hypothetical person I was talking about that might need some help in this area. Not me. Let me see if I got it right, John. 5, 10, and 20. 1 in 5 of every person who walks in is a leader.
Yes.
10 is I got to find the 10 in that. Once I've identified that one, find where there are 10.
Yes.
Then the 20% of my time. This is hard. In other words, this requires a reframing and restructuring of calendar, but it's 20% of your time required to invest in leadership. How did you get to that? And then B, did you always have that? Because I'm looking right now and I'm like, I have a lot of time that goes into sermon prep, staff stuff, other things with the church members. How do you begin to carve out 20% of time towards leadership development?
Many years ago, so that what I just gave, the 5, 10, 20, comes from a book I'm writing called Jesus Built Leaders. And
Nice.
And where this book came from was that when I was an early lead pastor in the first year of my church, I started teaching the team that I'd assembled from the Gospels about how Jesus selected leaders. And so that's where the second half of the book came from, which was really around what did Jesus look for in the leaders that he chose. But in the first half of the book, that came about maybe 8 years into my journey as a lead pastor, where I devoted a lengthy amount of time to asking, where did Jesus invest his time? Because my time was getting split, similarly,
Right.
Virgil, to how you're describing it in so many different areas. And I was like, okay, no greater leader than Jesus. And obviously, I'm a servant in his mission. So how did my leader use his time? And as I studied the Gospels, what I quickly realized was that where Jesus invested his time was into the development of leaders. He gave people his touch, he gave leaders his time. And so I really just began to take that concept and say, well, if that's what Jesus did, that's what I need to do. And so then I came up with a percentage of 20%, really just by saying what would be the optimal, like the maximum that you could give to this, before this became an unwieldy part of my overall commitments, and I came up with the 20% time.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
I'm just again, I'm downloading a lot of what you're sharing because I think I know it's already helping. It's already helping me. I've been kind of delving into how do I create this leadership pipeline that we feel in our hearts we need to create, because of we're seeing the growth, we're seeing the fruit, but we know there's a lid to that. And that lid is leaders. That lid is how many leaders can help us lead and multiply. This is powerful. I love this, John. I love this. I know one of the things that you incorporate is one of the things you incorporate in the Empower Leader program for lead pastors. Is there a gathering? Is there a time where you get together with other pastors, or you get multiple of them together?
We plan to do this on the horizon. I mean, effectively, where Empower Leader is at right now is that it's literally in stage 1. So stage 1,
Okay,
is right now is a 1-year coaching program that centers around Zoom interaction. So the reason for that is low barrier to entry, no matter where you are in the world. The second stage is digital resources that will be achieved by this year, and then the third stage will be on in-person retreats and environments. There's a huge demand for it, and we have run some already. It's just more the need to make sure that we're not splitting our focus between. If we have a sudden injection of capital, then we'll do the retreats faster. But right now, we got to build this thing step by step. Firm base to firm base.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. I want to do something, and then on the other side of this, on the other side of sharing with people how they can connect with you, I want to kind of finish off with a thought about maybe some pastors who are feeling maybe burnt out, or maybe they're feeling heavy or overwhelmed. But before that, I want to how can pastors connect with you? How can they find some of those resources, and how can they find out more about Empower Leader?
Well, so if pastors would like to connect with me, you can obviously follow me on social media. Instagram is my preferred platform that I interact with more consistently. But in all social media platforms, I am John Cameron, John Cameron, Cameron, and then ____. It's one of the most common names in the world is John Cameron. So that's how you'll find me. You can also go to empowerleader.org, and you can find out more about the coaching program in that environment. And if you reach out to me, I promise we will respond. Not within 24 hours, we'll be back to you, and it would be a great honor and delight to help you in any way that we can. We also just exist to make the life. We literally Empower Leader exists to make the life of lead pastors better. So if we can help you in any way, tell us what that is. And we are trying to make sure that we're viable, but we're also just here missionally. It's a coaching ministry. And we always try and say that. It's a coaching ministry. We exist to make the lives of lead pastors better.
Love that. Love that. Let's close off with this, John. I can't help but think there's some pastors leaning in right now, and they're feeling tired. They're feeling burnt out. They're struggling. What's some advice from your heart that we can leave with them?
One of the things that a piece of advice that I give to lead pastors a lot is the position that Joshua finds himself after the battle of Ai, when they are defeated at Ai. And not talking about artificial intelligence, but a town that is literally called AI. And Jericho, massive pinnacle moment, great success, followed by this embarrassing defeat where there's loss and there's tragedy and soldiers die, and he feels like his leadership is literally on the line. That's how Joshua feels. Joshua feels this is a census on my leadership. All the nations around me are going to hear about it. So he is in a very dark place personally. And so he's on the ground. He's got a negative perspective of his leadership. And if right now you are hurting, if you're a lead pastor listening to this and you are hurting right now, I need you to understand your perspective is probably distorted. 99 times out of 100, things are better than you think they are. But this is what God said to Joshua. He said, get up off the ground, right? So unfortunately for a leader, self-pity is a wasted emotion. You don't have the time for it. So we have to get ourselves back up off the ground. And here is the crucial thing that he did. He said, take the whole army and go conquer Ai. Now, I want you to understand this. Before the battle, they believed that with 3,000 soldiers, they could conquer the town. Now, God is take all the fighting men, 800,000 soldiers, go conquer Ai. And the best thing you can do when you ever feel like you're tired, you're burnt out, things are not going well, is to reduce the scope of your focus when it comes to activity. Identify one thing in your life that you can do. Give everything to that task and do it. Be very specific, and then as you do that thing, you are achieving. The next day, achieving something else. The next day, achieving something else. What happens so often is that people allow everything to occupy their focus, and by trying to give attention to everything, you do nothing. And so my strong counsel is what is in front of you right now that if you achieved it would make your life, your situation, your church better. And you could do it. You could do it in a day. Take that one thing and then put your phone on do not disturb, just get rid of any elimination, any distraction, and just focus on that one thing. Get it done, right? Then rest. The next day, do it again. The next day, do it again. And as you create a cycle of achievement and victory, suddenly you lift yourself out of feeling despondent and you find the energy that you need to move forward. And let's always remember that 90% of burnout, not 100, no way, but 90% of burnout is attached to the gap between expended effort and desired result. So if I feel that I've worked hard but I'm achieving nothing, I end up with lethargy. If I'm working hard but achieving, I feel energized. And so we know this because two teams finished the game. One are wallowing on the ground, looking like they've got nothing in the tank. The other is literally running laps around the field, throwing each other in the air. Victory creates energy. Victory creates energy. Wins produce wins. Forward momentum energizes you for forward momentum. So narrow the scope, go after one thing. I mean, Virgil, I could talk about this all day. I really could.
I could listen to it and talk about it all day too. That just means, John, that we're going to have to coordinate another AVAIL podcast together, especially when that book comes out. You mentioned a book. I think that'll be a perfect timing.
I'd love that.
Whenever the Lord brings that opportunity. But this is just great advice that you're sharing with us. And I know that there are some pastors that needed to hear that you just shared right now. And I just want to mention, everybody, I want to remind you where you can connect with John. Obviously on social media, specifically Instagram is a good way of connecting with John. It's at John Cameron ___. Also empowerleader.org, the Lead Pastor Coaching Program. I want to mention for those of you who are connected right now, the AVAIL Journal. If you're not subscribed, try your free trial subscription of the AVAIL Journal by going to availjournal.com. We want to put some in your hands for free. Check it out. It's one of the best Christian leadership resources out there. Want to highlight that. John, on behalf of Dr. Sam Chand, Martijn van Tilborg, our whole AVAIL team, we just want to say we honor you, brother. We're thankful for your leadership and that you're pouring out yourself into lead pastors. What an awesome thing that is. And we pray the Lord would continue to give you wisdom and favor so that it can continue for a long time.
Thank you, my friend. It's an honor to be with you. Thanks for having me, and appreciate you and Sam and Martijn and everybody. You guys are the best.
Thank you so much, John. And thank you for joining us for this episode of the AVAIL Podcast. For more leadership resources, check us out at theartofleadership.com. Make sure to claim your free trial subscription of the AVAIL Journal at availjournal.com. As always, my name is Virgil Sierra. I'm your AVAIL Podcast host. Thank you for connecting with us to learn the art of leadership here on the AVAIL Podcast.